Goats wey dey enter person farm chop yam go one day end up for pot of pepper soup. On an ordinary evening in Lagos in 2017, a phone rang in the home of a wealthy family. The voice in the line was calm, polite even. It apologized for the inconvenience. Then it named the price. $1 million. Not naira, dollars. The family had spent that day discovering that her husband and father had not come home from work. The voice explained patiently that he was safe, that he was being fed, that nothing bad would happen to him as long as the conversation stayed respectful. There was no shouting and no deadline. The voice was in no hurry. In this business, time worked for the man on the phone, and he knew it. Across the city in a room with blacked out windows, the husband sat on a bare mattress with a chain on his leg. He would be there for months. His family would sell property, empty accounts, and borrow from relatives to raise the money. And when it was finally over, the man on the phone would drive home to a mansion in one of the most exclusive estates in Lagos, past the gate man who greeted him at his own gate, and he would sleep well. The police had been hunting that voice for years. In all that time, they had only one thing, a name whispered by street informants. Evans. No face, no address, no photograph. Some officers privately doubted he existed at all. And when Nigeria finally did see his face, it would not be because a detective cracked the case. It would be because one exhausted man, on the 88th morning of his captivity, noticed that his guards had made a mistake. This is the story of Evans, the man Lagos called the Billionaire Kidnapper. How a disgraced apprentice from Nnewi turned fear into the most profitable private business in Nigerian crime. How he spent the money hiding in plain sight, among the same class of men he was hunting. And how, in the end, almost everyone who touched this case, including the policeman who caught him, finished somewhere they did not expect. His real name was Chukwudumeme Onwuamadike. He came from Nnewi in Anambra State, a town famous for exactly one thing: business. Nnewi is the heartland of the Igbo apprenticeship system. The boy serves a master for years, unpaid, carrying loads, minding the shop, learning the trade, and at the end, the master settles him. Capital. A shop of his own. A start in life. It is one of the oldest trust arrangements in West Africa. Evans entered it as a boy, serving a spare parts dealer. He never got settled. Years in, by the family's own account, his master accused him of stealing and threw him out with nothing. His father, a respected businessman, was so ashamed that he drove the boy from his own house as well. It was his mother who took him in, and his mother who raised the money that put him on the road to Lagos. You can read the rest of his life in that one story. Evans would always insist the system cheated him first. Whether that is true or simply convenient, what is certain is what he decided next. He was done waiting to be settled. He would collect his own settlements from other people. Lagos gave him the standard ladder. By his own confession, he moved through drug dealing and armed robbery, and he was good at both. Good enough to slip out to Ghana or South Africa whenever Nigeria got too warm for him. But robbery bothered him. Not morally, mathematically. The robbery is one afternoon of terrible risk for one bag of money. Then the money is spent and the race starts all over again. Somewhere in those years, Evans did the arithmetic that made him famous. A wealthy man is not worth what is in his pocket. He is worth what his family will pay, over weeks, in installments, to get him back alive. Robbery takes a man's money, kidnapping rents the man himself. It was in the coldest sense of the word, a better business model. And Evans, he ran it like a business. His targets were not politicians or celebrity, no, that was too loud. That would be too much heat. He hunted wealthy, low-profile businessmen, importers, factory owners, pharmaceutical executives, men whose names you've never heard, whose accounts were deep, and whose disappearance would never lead the evening news. Police say his gang studied each target for weeks. The house, the routines, the drive to the factory, before a single gun was drawn. The abduction itself was fast. What came after was slow, and the slowness was the method. Victims were driven to safe houses in quiet corners of Lagos like the one court records described in the Igando area. And they were chained. Not for days, for months. The ransom was demanded in dollars, and it opened at numbers most families could not even imagine. Then Evans waited. Every week that passed, the family grew more desperate, and the price grew more real. He negotiated personally, by phone, always calm, unhurried, almost courteous, and his gang worked in cells. The men who took you did not know the men who guarded you, and none of them knew where Evans slept. Where Evans slept was Magodo. If you know Lagos well, you know what that means. Magodo G.R.A is gated, guarded and expensive. Executives, directors, big men. Evans owned 2 mansions there, reportedly worth around 300 million naira. He had more houses in Accra in Ghana. Cars, watches, a wife and children, a house help, a gate man. The neighbors knew him as a successful spare parts dealer from Nnewi, a quiet family man who had done well for himself. Sit with what that means. The estate he slept in was full of exactly the kind of men his gang was studying. The apprentice who was thrown out with nothing had not just made money. He had bought his way into the world that rejected him, and he was feeding on it from the inside. For years, the Nigerian police chased the shadow. Victims came home broke and broken, describing masked men and blacked out rooms. Phone lines died the day ransoms were paid. Informants had one word to offer: Evans, and nothing to pin it to. The files grew. The reward on his head grew with them. It changed nothing. You simply can't arrest the rumor. Then, on the 14th of February, 2017, Valentine's Day, a gang blocked a car on Obokun Street off Ilupeju Road in Lagos. Inside it was Donatus Dunu, the managing director of Maiden Pharmaceuticals. He was taken in traffic, in daylight, and delivered to a safe house, and the phone calls to his family began. The opening price was in the millions of dollars. Everything went exactly as it had gone many times before. Evans had no way of knowing this was the last man he would ever take. For 88 days, Donatus Dunu lived on a mattress with a chain on his leg. By the logic of his captors, he was being kept carefully, fed, watered, alive, because a dead hostage is worthless stock. His family scraped together 223,000 euros and handed it over in installments to men whose faces they never saw. It was not enough. The voice on the phone wanted millions, and the voice was never in a hurry. Then, one morning in May, Dunu noticed something. The rhythm of the house had broken. Doors that were always locked were not. Guards who were always alert were not. 88 days in chain teaches a man the exact heartbeat of a building. And that morning, the heartbeat skipped. He ran. Weak and half-dressed, he ran through a part of Lagos he did not know, until he reached the road and begged strangers for help. And with that one desperate sprint, the most profitable criminal enterprise in Nigeria began to die. Because Donatus Dunu came out with one thing no victim had ever brought out before: a location. The case went to the Inspector General's Intelligence Response Team, the IRT, the unit Nigeria sends its impossible cases. It was led by the most famous police officer in the country, Abba Kyari. Abba Kyari was decorated, promoted, photographed, the Super Cup, credited with breaking cases no one else could. Remember his name. He matters twice in this story. Working outward from Dunu's escape route, the IRT found the safe house. From the safe house, phones. And from phones, patiently, over weeks, a trail that ended somewhere no officer expected. Inside the gates of Magodo, at the compound of a respectable businessman. On the 10th of June 2017, they came for him. And Evans, the ghost of Lagos, the man some officers had doubted was real, was taken alive in his own mansion, on his own marble floor, in front of his own family. What happened next had never happened to any Nigerian criminal. The police did not simply announce the arrest. They presented him. Evans stood in front of the cameras and confessed. Calmly, in detail, in the same unhurried voice his victims' families knew from the phone. Crowds gathered outside the station. Officers took photographs beside him like a trophy. For weeks, he was the biggest name in Nigeria. The kidnapper who lived like a senator. The apprentice who bought Magodo. His wife insisted her husband was a legitimate businessman who had been framed. Then, the spectacle met the Nigerian court system, and everything slowed down. At his first arraignment, Evans pleaded guilty. Then new lawyers arrived, and the plea changed. The confessions his defense now argued had been forced out of him. The trial that followed consumed 5 years. Witnesses, adjournments, motions upon motions. On the 25th of February 2022, Justice Hakeem Oshodi of the Lagos High Court delivered judgments in the Dunu case, guilty of conspiracy and kidnapping. The judge noted that Evans had shown no remorse and that he had tried to lie his way out of the charges. The sentence? Life imprisonment. Months later, a second case, the kidnapping of a businessman named Silvanus Ahamonu, whose family paid $420,000, added another conviction and more years on top of a life sentence. The billionaire kidnapper was finished. That should be the end of the story. It isn't. Go back to the Super Cup. Abba Kyari's capture of Evans made him a national hero. Awards, headlines, the face of what Nigerian policing could be. In 2021, a United States grand jury indicted him. The FBI alleged that Kyari had taken money from a man you may know, Ramon Abbas, the Instagram fraudster the world calls Hush Puppy, to arrest and jail one of Hush Puppy's own associates on demand as a service. We did a story on Hush Puppy and you can learn more about that in that video. Kyari denies all of it, and he has never been taken to America to answer it. But Nigeria suspended him and then arrested him in a separate case, accused alongside his own officers over a seized shipment of cocaine. He denies all of that too, and those charges are still moving through the courts. Whatever the outcome, this much is simple fact. The officer who caught Nigeria's most famous kidnapper has now spent years in custody himself. The hunter and the hunted, arrested 5 years apart, by the same country, in the same city's headlines. And Evans? Evans did what Evans has always done. He studied the system holding him, and he negotiated. In prison, he enrolled as a student, sat examinations, and earned a national teaching certificate in economics. The man who priced human beings in dollars became a qualified economics teacher, and he teaches fellow prisoners. His lawyers told the Lagos court that the federal government had given him a second chance by awarding him a scholarship, and that the man standing in front of the judge was no longer a criminal. He was a teacher. They were asking for something. In January 2025, Evans was back in court, rearranged for the murder of 2 policemen during an attack on a transport company owner, a charge he denies. His lawyers asked the state for a plea bargain, and as part of the offer, Evans volunteered to hand over 14 trucks to the Lagos state government. Consider that offer for a moment. For years, chained men bought their freedom from Evans, in installments. Now, Evans is offering the state installments for his. The apprentice who left Nnewi with nothing is still at the table, still negotiating, still certain that everything, freedom included, has a price. The court of Lagos will decide whether he's right. The goats don't dey for pot, e still dey beg say make the pepper not too much. This channel tells you true Nigerian stories, researched properly and told properly. Please like, share and subscribe.